What an astounding lack of self-awareness. Hello everyone, Masha Kleiner here. Today we are gonna talk again about decolonization. If you missed my previous video about UNDRIP, DRIPA and land rights, you might want to go and rewatch it, but now we will focus on racism. Let's briefly look at my favorite topic, anti-Semitism. So anti-Semitism is hostility toward Jews. An anti-Semite either wants to rid the world of Jews or, more moderately, to make a Jew powerless and defenseless. Zionism is the existence of Israel, the Jewish state, and while Israel exists, Jews are powerful, successful, and the opposite of defenseless. This is why anti-Zionism is anti-Semitic. Decolonization is the generalization of anti-Zionism. It is anti-Canadianism and anti-Western statehood. So, decolonization is to racism what anti-Zionism is to anti-Semitism. A few weeks ago, a leader of One BC, Dallas Brody, brought to the BC Legislative Assembly's attention that 50% of Canadians support deportation of illegal immigrants.
According to the National Post, quote, nearly half of all Canadians believe that mass deportations are necessary to stop illegal migration.
Members, please let her finish. Member, please continue.
My question, yes or no, does the Premier support deporting migrants who are here illegally, as do 50% of Canadians?
The NDP members were so rattled by this information that they started screaming and cursing. When Dallas could finally finish the question, in response, the Minister of Housing, Ravi Kahlon, accused her of racism and claimed that she sees people with his skin color as a threat.
But I don't know why the member sees people that look like me, that have my skin color, as such a threat.
I assume Minister is in Canada legally, so what triggered this reaction? Let's explore some examples. A classroom poster displayed in a grade 9 English class at Heart Lake Secondary School in Brampton, Ontario read, "All of our bodies are infected by the virus of white body supremacy. This virus was created by human beings in 1691 in the laboratory of the Virginia Assembly. It quickly spread throughout our continent, infecting all of its people. Today, white body supremacy remains within all of us." In the spring, the Elementary Teachers in Toronto Association held an anti-Black racism conference. In a presentation titled Decoding Whiteness, Power and Privilege in Parent-Caregiver Engagement, a Toronto District School Board coordinator explained that whiteness permeates everything we do, everywhere we go, what we think, what we eat, and how we dress. Side note, according to ChatGPT, anti-Black and Black should be capitalized because it recognizes Black people as a distinct shared identity and culture rather than just a color descriptor. On the other hand, white and anti-white is not capitalized, except the cases when discussing white privilege and white supremacy. The Waterloo Region District School Board staff attended a training where the word family was described as a harmful concept rooted in white supremacy. All my examples were reported exclusively by independent media. This is why they are all from Ontario. The legacy media only ever reports alleged racist incidents targeting people of color, or, if we use the newspeak, racialized people. If you have other examples from BC or other provinces' schools, please send them to me. Of course, what starts at schools doesn't end with schools. An official X account of Government of Canada Job Opportunities posts a reminder for applicants for a government position to self-declare if you belong to a designated employment equity group. Employment equity groups are Indigenous people, women, persons with disabilities, and members of visible minorities. In short, Government of Canada announces that healthy white men need not apply. Another example is an assistant professor job at the University of Victoria, which is only open to Black people and people of color. BC Cancer in Vancouver wants to hire a unit clerk, and the job requirements list, quote, comprehensive knowledge of the historic and ongoing impacts of settler colonialism and systemic racism on Indigenous peoples within social health contexts, end quote. And the demand is for the candidate to commit to eradicating indigenous-specific racism and all forms of discrimination. In total, the word racism appears 14 times in the clerk's job requirements, qualifications, and competencies. The top of the racial victimhood privilege pyramid in Canada is occupied by the Indigenous people. In 2021, the National Film Board adopted a race-based licensing regime that bans non-Indigenous filmmakers from using archival footage showing Indigenous people unless they receive a special approval. Universities are at the forefront of any craziness as usual. Langara College in Vancouver declares on their homepage that it is dedicated to advancing indigenization. Indigenization, as per Oxford Dictionary definition, is the action or process of bringing something under the control, dominance, or influence of the people native to an area. Concordia University collaborated with the Kawanaki Environment Protection Office to establish an air quality monitoring network. Sounds like a good and reasonable task until you learn the project's name, Decolonizing Light, centering Indigenous concerns in science. I don't know whether the name was driven by the ideology of the project participants, the potential sponsors, or both. A paper published in the McGill Journal of Education describes a teaching course called Indigenizing Perspectives and Practices in Education. The course dictates that future teachers apply land-based learning and indigenous knowledge systems. The teachers should abandon many centuries of Western science and instead observe the changes of the seasons, engage in tribal ceremonies, and develop a relationship with the land. This is not my frivolous interpretation. The paper is transparently titled Unlearning Colonial Identities. This is not a thought experiment either. This is a real course that was taught by the article's author between 2011 and 2017 at Lakehead University in Ontario. I wonder, do the tribal chiefs rely on their indigenous systems of knowledge when they have a heart attack or an appendicitis? Or maybe they resort to modern colonial medicine, surgeries, blood transfusions, and antibiotics. In my research, I came across Wilfred Bach, described as an indigenous astronomer. I had a heated conversation with ChatGPT about the concept of indigenous astronomy. ChatGPT is more woke than I could ever imagine in my scariest dreams. It kept presenting me with vague explanations about the empirical knowledge. I had to be very insistent to finally get it to admit that indigenous astronomy is simply less developed than modern Western astronomy. Eventually, ChatGPT revealed that Wilfred Bach is not an astronomer in the professional or scientific sense. He has not made scientific contributions that advanced astronomy as a science. What he does is document and revive Cree star stories about constellations. Folklore is fascinating, but it loses most of its charm when it pretends to be astronomy. Reverse racism cannot solve problems, even if originally the problems were caused by racism. But ideologues care so little about helping people that sometimes they forget to even pretend. A queer Albanian immigrant, youth from care and adoptee, wrote a thesis arguing that Canada's child welfare system should stop keeping records of child abuse because they lead to higher rates of Indigenous children being placed in foster care and into white Canadian families. Modern Canada is hardly a country known for its groundbreaking science and technology, but it is light years ahead in decolonization. The Justice AI GPT is a decolonial intelligence algorithmic framework. It was founded by a Canadian decolonial social scientist to solve the bias problem.
I didn't start with Western institutions. I started with people, over 560 decolonial specialists from every continent. Each with over 30 years of experience in dismantling systems of oppression came together. From Afro-Indigenous community leaders to disability justice technologists, we combined our collective brilliance to encode ancestral knowledge into code.
What an astounding lack of self-awareness. They used the racist electricity, the colonial computers, and the oppressive internet to berate the very civilization that created all of this. Full disclosure, these videos are non-partisan and I make them in my free time. This is why it takes me so long. It just so happens that the party I work for is the only party in Canada raising all the untouchable topics in Canadian life, society, and politics. Recently, our party tabled the Land Acknowledgement Prohibition Act.
Land acknowledgements are the anthem of a suicidal nation. They tell our children that we stand on stolen land. British Columbia has a glorious history. Our British founders entered this land in the 18th century as the untamed wilderness that it was. They built roads, railroads, mines, homes, and established laws. They created a civilization we call home and enjoy today. The truth is they did not steal Canada, they built Canada. Mr. Speaker, the Land Acknowledgement Prohibition Act declares that this land belongs to all British Columbians. We should end all forms of discrimination between citizens based on race or ancestry.
My heart pounded when I listened to these words pronounced in the BC legislature. Like our other three bills, this bill was voted down in first reading. This is very unusual. The first reading is just procedural, but the BC NDP government couldn't even debate our bill in a democratic way. The objective of the land acknowledgement, by the very definition provided by the curriculum of Government BC, is to develop a mindset of cultural humility. For example, at Brock School in Vancouver, second grade students made a poster saying, "We accept that the land that we are on belongs to the indigenous people. We recognize that we are guests on this land. The majority of these kids are Canadian-born and/or Canadian citizens, and they are being indoctrinated that this is not their country." No wonder that many of these children grow up to be activists. Shake Up the Establishment, SUTE, is one of the Canadian organizers of the International Draw the Line demonstrations. Their webpage states that SUTE advances climate justice across what is currently known as Canada. SUTE is a non-profit that indirectly receives Canadian federal government grants. Our governments use our taxpayer dollars to fund the destruction of our own country. The fascists of the future will call themselves anti-fascist. This quote is falsely attributed to Winston Churchill, but it is still a very good quote. The racists of today call themselves anti-racist. The most violent and hateful people claim to be anti-hate and anti-violence. Unapologetically telling the truth is the first step to fighting back. Telling the truth isn't easy, and truth tellers are punished for it. The high price is also an irrefutable evidence of the power of truth. Please speak up. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.